drawing. I couldn't figure out why.
It's unbelievable.
Next to the road, there was
I'll
a
say to the wife, I'll say, you want to go to
slash
slash?
mark there.
Yeah.
And she'll go, yeah, right, it's
Then
Monday.
after I looked at it, I kept thinking. It's just
So, through COVID.
sidewalk in
Yeah.
there, yeah.
Right, and Dan's brother is on the board of Tri-County Office on Aging. His brother Carl. So
Sheila knows him real well. Sheila works at Tri-County and does some stuff for Meals on Wheels. So
Oh, yeah.
she knows Carl.
Well, one good thing with Meals on Wheels is we're buying some new trucks, some new vans. Because some of them are kind of shabby.
Yeah, and they get pretty,
Oh, they get
they
used.
get beat up.
Oh, yeah.
So it just, I mean, I was amazed that shortly after you went to work there. And I went over to visit her and see her office.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't believe the kitchen they have. Well, they put out how many thousand meals?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. Yeah.
it was, that's always a deal there, you've got budgets and, you got food and price increases and, so they're juggling all the time.
Yep.
And now with the delivery thing, you got gasoline prices.
Big problem, yeah. Yeah, I wonder if that's gonna start hitting some of their drivers. Yeah. So, yeah. Crazy times.
May you live in interesting times. How you doing, Mr. Chair?
It's fine, how are you?
Good. You enjoying your retirement?
I'm not as retired as I used to be.
Oh, you found that out.
Well, I was asked to become book director of the bookstore.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
And?
so I feel obligated to put some time in, so. We got another sale this weekend. A BOGO for romance and for biographies. Buy one, get one.
After you guys have those sales like that.
Hello.
Hello. How are you? Do you get
I'm
rid
well,
of
how are
the books
you?
or do you restock the shelves? I've been placed.
I'm
Well,
assuming
a
next
big,
time.
big sale, we
Pretty rough.
get rid of the excess books. They end up going over to
Hey, Bob.
Goodwill.
Are we missing your plate?
But
Boy, that's a subtle message.
Listen, maybe they're trying to tell you something.
Mark Boucher did plates today. Mark was in. Mark, what you do with Bob's plate?
It wasn't there.
Gotta find it, because he's also on the.
He probably got put on the board.
So
Did
is
you
it
migrate to the board?
Moudry or our chairperson?
I just got it. I did the best job I could with what I had to deal with.
there is a.
Just like any bureaucracy, pass the buck. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Was he with the zoning commission? He was.
I'm good. Now that I know I'm welcome.
Always welcome.
Everybody is welcome, just some more than others.
Now, as long as they don't walk off and leave that sitting there, I'll be okay.
I'll watch it for you.
I'm real good at that.
Are you back open, Wendy? How's it going?
Yeah, nothing. Also. Probably
Because we-
early October.
we've had so many canceled meetings. you know.
Yeah, early October. Yep, it's back to usual pretty much.
Just gonna suggest maybe there was something to do with
Or
the collective group.
still safety protocol and stuff.
Okay.
I'm not sure what it
You
is.
guys don't do acupuncture, do you?
Do what?
Okay,
Acupuncture? No.
no. Is he? I thought he was coming back.
I'd like to offer, but it's hard to find people
Not
who
here.
do it, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
who will do it.
Dave,
If he is, it's moved.
is Gary back?
Gary is back.
Oh, okay.
Oh, he is.
He's coming in half days for the next few weeks. Kind of trying to work back up to full time.
Oh,
Okay.
He did say hello. I was gonna wait until staff comments, but waited
Well, Bob asked
take
me
away my
something.
thunder.
No, I told him I was gonna suggest that we do something as a collective group
Hmm.
to send to him, but if he's back, heck with him.
He's getting the big paycheck. I didn't bring my phone with me. What is 6 o'clock?
5:57.
yeah.
Yeah, couple of minutes.
5:57. 5:57.
5:57, okay. I looked at your.
Oh, it's fast. I don't think any clock in my house has the same time.
So, as the boss of the house, Justin,
Bossy,
huh?
bossy. Tell him, trying to tell me what to do. We had to have a come to Jesus meeting a couple weeks ago on who makes the rules. He seems to think he's my equal. He thinks he's supposed to be rewarded for everything he does.
I think maybe it's time to replace an ink cartridge.
Society
Perhaps.
seems to be that way, yeah, it's hard to be the other way, yeah.
I told him it don't work like that.
Yep, yep.
Since I got dressed on time, I should get a reward.
I was smart and downloaded
Your
everything
reward is you get out the house.
ahead of time this time.
You don't get punished, right?
I still have never bought a laptop. so-
5:59.
That's fair. This is from work, so that's like, that's okay.
See, they never gave me one work primarily because I told them, I said, if you
Lower
want to
right-hand corner.
get me to
Oh, okay.
retire earlier, try to tether me to a laptop or worse yet, a cell phone. Said, you know how to get a hold of me on my cell phone, on my
Exactly.
time. They tried several times to give me one. I said, no.
The Delta Township Planning Commission meeting for March 28th will come to order, please. Start off with the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Member Maddow. Member Elzinga,
Here,
member McConnell,
Present.
member Mudry,
Here?
member Kozinski,
Here?
member Bradley,
here.
member Weinfeld, member Switzer,
Present.
and Proctor is present.
Okay, we have a quorum. Next is approval of agenda.
So moved.
Support?
Been moved by Mr. Kaczynski, supported by Mr. Mudry, that we approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Next is approval of minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the minutes of January 10th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting and summary record for cases number 122-1 and 122-2, special land use permit request for 4359 West Saginaw Highway.
Support.
Moved by Mr. McConnell, supported by
Proctor.
Ms. Proctor. Sorry.
You kicking both of us off?
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any, all opposed? Motion carried. Next is citizen comments for items not on the agenda. Anyone here on front item not on the agenda? Seeing none. Correspondence, we have none. Old business, none. New business. Ms. Proctor.
Yeah, this is for the site plan review of Delta Crossings Phase 3, a 349 unit multifamily residential development in Section 9 of Delta Crossing.
Thank you. David?
Hi, so before the planning commission today, we have a site plan review for Delta Crossings Phase 3. Going through the staff report, we can take a look. This parcel was recently rezoned in earlier in 2020. The minutes from that meeting were included in your packet to kind of refresh you on testimony that was given and general sentiment for this development. The rezoning did go through, so the property is zoned RM, multifamily residential. What the applicant is requesting is 349 units split up in 6 different property types in the or building types rather. You can see the breakdown for total number of buildings, total number of units, and then total bedrooms. So when we are all said and done, this will bring approximately 349 new units into Section 9. The lay of the land, let's go to the site plan. So right here is the currently constructed BJ's building. This will be the at-home site, which is under construction right now. So the parcel will take, or the development will take place on approximately 42 acres plus or minus north of that original Phase 2 development. They're proposing an extension of Carlson Road, which is this east-west road, which will come into an intersection of Marketplace Boulevard. Marketplace Boulevard is currently exists right here. It's proposed to be extended north all the way to the extent of this property line. The applicant has stated that this will ultimately be a phase plan, but they aren't yet certain which will be phase 1 or 2 or 3 even. So any stipulations for an approval in tonight's meeting should request updating for phases. I actually forgot to put that in my staff report, and I do apologize for that. So if you see along Carlson Road, these are going to be the 36 unit buildings situated on the south of Carlson Road. Also, these 3 are 36 unit buildings. These 2 right here are going to be the 18 unit buildings. This building right here at the corner of Carlson Road and Broadbent, that's going to be the clubhouse and pool area. And behind it is the 2 to 6 unit attached housing, various styles pertaining to ranch and also 2-story colonial. Going back to the site or the staff report. So as you're likely aware, I did have some current concerns about the existing right of way, which was shown on the initial plan. Those concerns have been discussed with the developer and they have agreed to update it to an 80-foot right of way, which I have confirmation from the Township Engineering Department and also Eaton County Road Commission that would be satisfactory, and everything that we need to fit in a right of way would be able to fit in 80 feet. So what that does hopefully is going to bring the larger buildings a little bit closer to the road and enhance and enlarge the rear park area the developer is planning. You can note that I talked to speed and design of the road. This is a unique opportunity. Not very often the planning commission gets to look at the design of a road and provide comments. So given the fact that, you know, the present design on the first iteration of the site plan, when conferring with the road commission, it's designed like a 45-mile-an-hour road. The curves in the road can be comfortably driven at 45 miles an hour. We met with the developer on Friday, where they stated that that wasn't their intent to have a road go that fast. Ultimately, they would like to see it 25, maybe 35 miles an hour. And, you know, during that meeting, we talked about the importance of pedestrian safety, given that so many new residents will be in this area. And on Friday, the applicant committed to providing a road safety study for Carlson Road regarding proper design and getting it to something that's comfortably 25 to 35 feet. Internally, we've had some conversations about what that may look like. One thing that was brought up was a bioswale boulevard. We discussed that with the applicant on Friday. The applicant was responsive to it. They actually provided a cross section, which I can bring up in a little bit that I got today. But we still need buy-in from both Road Commission and Eaton County Drain. So we're waiting for that right now. Basically what the bioswale does, the center lane becomes a stormwater retention area. So the Road Commission states that has to be owned and maintained by the drain office. So the drain office isn't used to necessarily dealing with things like that, which other communities, you know, bioswales have been utilized, you know, past 10, 15 years. It's still a little bit new for Eaton County. So that's what we're trying to push towards, and you know, just working with outside agencies to see if we can get everyone on board for that design. If not, the applicant has stated that they would think that they also thought a boulevard would look nice there, which could be, you know, a fallback plan. But I think the bioswale idea is a little bit more progressive. And talking to the Eaton County Drain Office, their engineering consultant, Spicer Group, they're familiar with bioswales that they've done in Ingham County, and are possibly looking at as some sort of pilot project for Eaton County, because, you know, Eagle isn't going to make things easier for water retention, and he let me know in the next couple of years that things are going to get a little bit more restrictive. So this could actually be a net benefit for stormwater retention for this development, if it, you know, if it's still going on in the next couple of years. So that's positive. So if we look at Marketplace Boulevard, you know, I reference it in the staff report that it shows to be a roundabout, and also that, you know, there has been some conversation perhaps that a roundabout or that the design that we are seeing right now may not be what is ultimately constructed. I've seen a version of the plan that has the eastern leg of the roundabout gone, and that becomes a larger building site for a commercial entity. And though staff is supportive of that design, a roundabout is a very expensive traffic mechanism. And I kind of not seen a point to having a roundabout if it doesn't have that east-west leg. I brought that concern up to Matt Hannis, the Road Commission, and he tended to agree with me. So but just pointing out that the roundabout is in the plan right now. And it might not necessarily stay in the plan in future, depending on what happens with phase 4. I think they're still working out the developments between the potential client that would take that space. Also with Marketplace, the road commission stated that they didn't agree that it had to be as wide as the current plan is showing. So as right now, I believe there's 5 lanes for Marketplace north of the roundabout. Matt Hanna stated that only needs to be 3. So that would be a change that we would have to look at going forward. So we're talking about existing vegetation and required buffers. This graph shows the wall of forest that is required around this site based on our zoning ordinance. So on the north side would be a type B buffer. On the west side is a type C. Then again, further on the west side is a type B where it's adjacent to RB. This B buffer is currently being planted and it was part of the review for BJ's and also at home. This B buffer will also be part of whatever commercial entity comes next. And the C buffer is interesting. Technically, they have to install it. At the least, they have to show it right now on plans, depending on what their phase schedule is. Because long-term, this area is not going to be HE2. It'll likely be commercial or possibly some sort of office use. And when that changes, the requirement for the buffer changes. So it's just kind of a time limit on which comes first. If they need to, build out this portion of the apartment complex, then it needs to have a type C buffer in there. If they don't, then that could be reduced to a type B buffer and kind of be responsible for on the other side of the property.
Can you explain the C and a B buffer, please?
It's just a matter of width. A C buffer is a 10-foot buffer, and I believe a B buffer is a 20-foot buffer, and then an A.
Just the depth?
Yeah, and like an A is our most industrious buffer or most dense buffer, usually for when industrial is next to residential.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's just a matter of berming and planting. So now that we've kind of got the buffers going on, let's talk about the existing vegetation. So this is a shot I pulled from the real estate ads of Eastbrook Homes that are, they're the developer in Shadow Glen, which is the neighborhood to the north of the proposed phase 3. So what you're seeing right here is on the plan, you'll notice that there was a triangular retention pond. So this is that retention pond, and that tree line is pretty much indicative of where the property line is. So, it is a very dense tree line. The applicant is proposing to save the first 40 feet in from the property line, which is basically the rear yard setback, thicker than any buffer that we would require. I do have some concerns around the face of the pond, because what you're looking at right now would be open screened, and I don't believe the 40 feet is kind of this area and not necessarily around the triangular portion. And if we look, I think I got a better picture.
Yeah, has there been discussion about maintaining more of that, thinking not just in terms of the required depth of the buffer, but thinking about the fact that back in around those retention ponds and that kind of stuff is also a fairly significant habitat?
Well, so that's basically why I brought this up specifically. So there's 2 standards in the zoning ordinance. Section 12.02 landscaping, which talks about the purpose of landscaping, and section 2 or 12.025 is to preserve and enhance existing environmental systems and wildlife habitat, including woodlands, wetlands, and grasslands. And then there's also section 13.02 preservation of environmental quality, which also talks about protecting living trees. So as of right now, the way the applicant is proposing, I'm kind of, I wasn't really sure how the planning commission wanted me to interpret that. You know, there's a lot of different ways. We've never really been asked this question before because, you know, this is a relatively new zoning ordinance. And granted, so, you know, this is an overlay of a Google Maps image with the site plan. So you can kind of see approximately where the tree line is, and you know what kind of impact this proposed development would have on it, and whether that meets the standards. I didn't want to say because I didn't necessarily know how the planning commission wanted to interpret those two ordinance requests or standards rather. So that, you know, that was my point of discussion for tonight. One of the main ones is, you know, when you talk about tree preservation and woodland preservation, you know, we have those standards saying do it, but you know, is this enough for that for you? So, you know, that would be something to discuss among yourself, and it really is going to be policy setting because, you know, however we act tonight is how, you know, I'll continue to interpret the ordinance going forward in my review.
David, can I?
Yeah.
When the Shadow Glen people came about the zoning issue, a lot of them were concerned about the amount of trees that were going to be cut down. Okay. And ironically, when the Shadow Glen subdivision was made, this would have been back in a time of the previous zoning ordinances. Okay. A lot of trees were cut down to make Shadow Glen subdivision. I thought it was quite ironic that a group that wants to, you know, save trees and vegetation, there was a lot of trees where that subdivision was made. And I think that was one of the test cases with the new zoning ordinance, that we preserve a lot more trees because of that incident.
Well, so the way we handle it in the new zoning ordinance, we actually, I mean, it's kind of up to the developer of any single family residential district to on what they want to preserve. You know, the board, and I kind of think it was also this commission, we pulled out standards for single family because we didn't want to, you know, say what a individual can or can't do on their property. And, you know, as a matter of enforcing an ordinance like that, that becomes extremely difficult because we don't have, you know, a beginning map for trees for, you know, residential areas that have already been constructed. So, you know, our tree preservation really is, you know, only has the most teeth in commercial, industrial and office. And it's kind of, it's left to its own accord in the single family residential and ag districts. And then it kind of, the RM gets left out. It's kind of ambiguous, which is why we're having the discussion tonight. There's no specific standards for saving trees, you know, specific heritage trees, as I like to call them, you know, larger specimens.
Yeah.
They do have to tag them, which the applicant did per requirements of the zoning ordinance. So we know, you know, what trees are there, but there's no, you know, specifically stated mandate that, you know, they have to save those trees. It's just a generalized statement that says, you know, the point of landscaping is to protect woodlands and preserve wetlands and also protect living trees.
Well, when this came before us, they were looking at the developers who we were talking to. Now we got the people that are actually living there who will retain this. So you got a different perspective there between the two periods of time.
Right, right. I understand that, Jim.
Yeah.
It's just that when the subdivision was made, there was a lot of clear cut done. Okay.
Right.
And the people that now live there don't want that to happen in their neighborhood or beyond their fence. Okay. So I'm not saying one way or another. I'm just bringing history back into the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, my concern with it, like I said, is current preservation of habitat, but also thinking forward. I mean, there's discussion in here about a non-motorized path going through that area to the general benefit of all of the residents and presumably other residents of the township. As part of that, presumably we would want to make the land around that non-motorized as nice as possible and as natural as possible. So I would just strongly urge that we look, very carefully at what is practical, recognizing that, we can't stuff the jack in the box back in the box. That, the project has been approved and rezoned. And obviously they need to be allowed to proceed with developing it in a way which is practical and economically feasible. Which means we can't preserve everything. I would just like to strongly urge that we maximize the preservation wherever possible.
Yeah, I support that. Trying to think, yes, the question I think you're raising is, what does that translate to in terms of specific guidelines that will have implications for the future?
Mhm. I mean, the reality is, we specifically don't have stated guidelines for this. We have some ambiguous language and, based on your interpretation of that standard, I mean, we can continue onward and enforce it and interpret all, following submissions in that same way.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a quick and dirty.
No,
No.
right. It's
No,
not.
the related question I have is, do we know if other communities have translated any guidelines like that for?
I haven't had time to look into other communities. I mean, I know Meridian Township has a pretty substantial preservation ordinance, but the specifics of it aren't really, they don't come to light to me right now.
I'm gonna guess East Lansing's got a pretty significant one too,
Mhm.
with tree preservation.
How do you know what's actually there?
So the applicant, provided a pretty in-depth analysis in the site plan. And I know, I gave you about 12 pages and the whole thing is about 120. So, it's in there, it's downloadable, but hopefully you have a very good computer.
It took me forever and it was still figuring it out, like I gotta go.
Well, there must be.
But I mean, it's
Is this?
we have a pretty discernible line to say that, what a woodland is. A woodland is a group of trees. I mean, we have a pretty discernible tree line. And I guess, are you comfortable with cutting it right there and protecting the woodlands in just the 40-foot areas? And then, in the staff report, I kind of studied this and I looked at, areas in between buildings where, we could possibly save some more trees. Right here along Marketplace, if with the proper planning, you could have, this whole northern part of Marketplace behind these apartment buildings be pretty densely forested still. So it's a matter of, is just having, these spaces in here and having tree preservation there enough? Or, when you say, should we protect wetlands and environmental habitats?
Well, I guess my first thought in looking at that was I'm less concerned about the areas in between the buildings. I'm more concerned with preserving woodland along the verge of the retention pond, if that's possible. That accomplishes two purposes. It's obviously good for the wetland itself, for the pond.
So more out on the perimeter.
Yeah, Yeah, more along as close as possible to the property line with Shadow Glen. But again, I think it makes it more park-like, it makes it more attractive. What I don't know is if that's practical. I mean, that's fairly tied up to that retention pond. So,
It's also true that when you get into this, the woodlands don't have the right type of trees.
mhm,
They have fast growing trees. And it might be much better off having the developer bring in specimen trees in specific places for beautification purposes and whatever,
Right.
because there's a lot of scruff in woodlands that really isn't.
oh, yeah.
Can I just ask for clarification? So I know we're talking 40 feet and I did read this, but still just because a picture is worth 1,000 words.
40 foot's
So-
this line right here.
Yep, that's that line. So then what's the distance between that and the ones at the angle and the, like, basically in the center of it? If you're talking about the retention pond, yeah, that area. What's the delineation there?
You mean how long is this?
Like, yeah, like how much is actually being, what's this, what would that be?
1 second.
For fun, I'm sorry. I appreciate you trying to answer that.
So from here to here is about 375 feet approximately. Based on Google Maps. And this is about 1,000.
You're talking about depth or length of the.
I'm talking about depth. So if I'm in those units and here's the retention pond, how much?
Oh, about 50 feet.
Thank you.
About
I
50
appreciate
feet.
that. I was guessing around 40, so okay, all right. Thank you. I appreciate
Gotcha, I
that.
misunderstood the question
Well,
there.
I'm not speaking in your language, so. This spot to this spot. That's helpful. Thank you. And so you plan on keeping that as natural as you can
We don't touch anything within that.
within that spot? Okay.
So then how far from that 40 foot is the actual the buildings themselves?
Your buildings are approximately from the wetlands about 50.
Okay, so when you say 50 feet, how much of the,
Right, because there's gonna be approximately 30 to 35 feet remain untouched from the wetlands towards the buildings, about a 30 to 35 foot
so you got about 15 foot. buffer
15, 20
between
feet of yard.
yard.
Between the yard and
Okay.
Yeah, like just enough to do the grading and have a deck out back or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
The way you would expect, yeah.
all right.
Because obviously in the long run, it's cheaper to maintain it. than to dump this long.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Jim,
Totally understand.
Jim, for the record, should we have the speaker identified name and so forth?
Yeah, come to the podium when you're done with this for comments.
I don't know if you guys want us to come now and start talking.
David,
Well,
But I mean, we're still kind of just
let
halfway.
David finish, yeah.
let David finish up.
So that's, one of the things that I thought that the planning commission should discuss more about and hopefully come to some sort of understanding. So, we can move forward on whether this plan would be fine or whether they need to come back with some changes.
Okay.
So like I said, section 12.02 landscaping talks about the purpose of landscaping and, sorry. And specifically 5, it's to preserve and enhance existing environmental systems and wildlife habitat, including woodlands, wetlands, and grasslands. And then also to protect living trees. But there's no stated standard on how to do that. All right, so going on the dimensional standards, these are the setbacks of the buildings. Everything that they have is within reason. No building is, too near, then it has to be Proposed heights, the largest building is going to be 39 feet, 1.5 inches, and then down. Site area, it's approximately 41 acres. Frontage is fine. Density, they could do 11 units per acre, and they're showing about 8.1 units per acre. Water and sewer, engineering has provided comments. His memo was attached to the staff report. Everything looks fine. There's a couple things. Vehicular access, like I said, we're still in conversation with all the entities to talk about road design. Fire protection has had a look on it. I was trying to see if we could get the internal roads reduced to 20 feet, which is our minimum in our ordinance. The fire department said no, pretty
Okay.
firmly. So I have to kind of give that one up. Parking requirements, they're fine. There's 44 more spots than is needed. However, that seems perfectly reasonable for a development like this. Parking lot design, this is kind of some, so on the site plan, they have all of their roads listed as private. We specifically have a definition for any road or thoroughfare for vehicular traffic, which is privately owned and maintained, and which provides the principal means of access to abutting properties. All those roads meet that definition of a private road in our ordinance. So when we had our meeting with the developer on Friday, I brought the standard up, and they're saying that it's not a private road, it's a parking lot. And whether that's how the planning commission wants to interpret this, would be fine with me. I'm just pointing out, inconsistencies within the ordinance that I identified during my review. So that being one of them. Basically, the off-street parking facilities, which necessitates vehicles backing directly into a public or private road, are prohibited. So if you can remember on their site plan, they have the two parking lots, two sides of the parking lot in front of the larger buildings, and the private road kind of goes in through. I could see arguments for both sides, and it's just once again a matter of how the planning commission wants to interpret that. Landscape requirements, there's going to be buffers which we've already talked about. Tree preservation, which we've already talked about. There'll be parking lot landscaping. I didn't check on their parking lot landscaping 100% because I wasn't sure if anything was going to change site design wise. But the parking lot landscaping is going to be just like commercial. I think it's 1 tree per 6 spots. It's got to be within 10 feet of the parking lot. And any tree outside of that 10-foot buffer can't be counted for parking lot landscaping. So we go to the general standards review for all site plans. One, the proposed use will not be injurious to the general health, safety, welfare, and character of the township and surrounding neighborhoods. The buildings that they submitted were well designed and attractive. It's regarding this, it's them answering the question about the design of Carlson Road and whether it's the most safe design for traffic and for vehicular and non-motorized and pedestrian traffic. So the applicant stated on Friday's meeting that they would provide a study to look into that, and that would be, that's great. That's exactly what we would need to see if we can get this one answered, that they meet the standard. The proposed development is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It does meet the standard. There's a proper relationship between public thoroughfares and proposed service driveways, and parking areas. Again, talks about the need for a traffic study to look at the internal traffic movements within the development. Proposed development provides for proper development of roads, easements, and public utilities. Once again, this would be answered by the traffic study. And while we're talking about that, I do bring up in the report that I had some concerns about traffic counts. So the applicant did provide a interpretation by the traffic engineer, which says that as of right now, between what was approved in 2020 and phase 3, there's a difference of 100 and 34 additional spaces in here. So, you know, now we have this to look on for the next thing, and every 1,000 trips per day, they would be required to do a full update. So as of right now, I'm content with, you know, this and not requiring a new full update for phase 3. Site access and circulation, again, we've talked about already. Site plan, design of specific improvements with accomplished to the preservation and protection of the existing natural areas. Once again, you know, we did talk to that. All streets shall be developed in accordance with the Eaton County Road Commission. Again, you know, we're still working on what the best design of Carlson Road is with all the entities that we can. And, you know, it might just be something that, you know, the planning commission should discuss whether they trust staff enough to, you know, to determine that it's something that is if it's acceptable to staff, it'd be acceptable to the planning commission, or if you wanted to wait to let them, you know, present the design of Carlson Road prior, either would be, you know, under your purview. So this is where I talk about the potential non-motorized connection. So if you look right here, there's, you know, all those drainage areas and a part of Shadow Glen which is unplatted and it brings up to that street. So I looked at that as a possible great, you know, connection, non-motorized connection for our residents in Shadow Glen to get down to here if they wanted to, and vice versa, but also, you know, potentially get behind here to a pathway that could go out to Broadbent and across perhaps. And what this is actually an unrealized road right of way. And through that development, you could actually construct a pretty nice back entrance into Luton's Park. Luton's is our passive park. A lot of people actually don't even know it's there. So, you know, that was just an opportunity I saw and thought I would bring up in this review. We talked about it with the developer on Friday. They seemed, you know, completely fine with it. So we're just asking for an easement right now because it's not even in part of our plan. So if we were to build it, then, you know, it would be the township's responsibility, but just making sure that we get that easement. Stormwater sewers, I haven't heard back officially from the drain office, but I mean, everything kind of flows north towards those ponds. And, you know, we're going to specifically work with them to see if we can get the bioswales as part of that.
Yeah, and those ponds are adequate to absorb any additional runoff we would generate from the.
I believe so, yeah.
Because I know there's been comments made by a couple of the Shadow Glen people that some of the southernmost residences in Shadow Glen have had some problem with yard flooding and that kind of stuff, so.
Well, I mean, you know, the floodplain is designed to occasionally go past its boundaries. And I think it really only becomes an issue if those, you know, if the water's getting into people's basements.
Right.
There are no basements in this development though, right?
No, not in this one. You know, wastewater, it talks about septic systems, which isn't applicable because this will be connected to public sewer. This talks about the landscaping. And, you know, we've already discussed this almost, you know, perhaps maybe a little too much. The site plan shall comply with all applicable township ordinances and any other applicable laws. You know, as of right now, there's a lot of holes in the site plan, which can be, or a lot of questions that can be answered through you know, how the planning commission wants to interpret these, you know, open-ended standards going forward. And that's kind of where, why I stated that this, as of right now, did not meet the standards because I didn't know which direction the planning commission wanted to take with it. So in conclusion, my discussion topics were traffic and pedestrian safety for street study, or the need of a traffic and pedestrian safety study for Carlson Road, the amount of tree preservation required in this development, and the planning commission's interpretation of a private road regarding section 11.04A3, which is that standard where you can't back into a private road. And I can take any questions.
As far as Carlson Road, I myself would like to see that standard set at 25 to 35 miles an hour. You know, that's a short distance to pick up that speed. And
Mhm.
so that's my feeling as far as that goes.
Yeah, I feel,
Since Jim brought this up, South Marketplace is unposted speed limit.
It's 55.
It's 55. That's what I tell people, if you can hold the road. I've traveled that road many a time, and at 40 miles an hour, you're getting to the edge,
Mhm.
okay? But people travel that not knowing what the speed limit is, anywhere from 15 to 40.
Yeah, I mean, it's 55 because it's not posted. You know, we talked to Matt Hannis about that during our meeting with him. It's just a matter of, you know, someone would need to spend the money to do a proper, you know, study and, you know, get to the 85th percentile of what people travel. And that's how
Now, that road is not private, correct?
Marketplace now.
Right, okay, because that would be another thing. It's not posted because it is a private road.
No, that's public.
It's public, right? And so the North Marketplace will be the same situation, correct?
Public, correct.
Yep. And I thought the roundabout was a great idea, but you know, what are you talking about? Street light or stoplights situation there?
It'd just be probably a stop sign.
Stop signs?
Yeah, just a traditional T intersection.
Four-way stop?
Three-way, because they're the proposal that I've seen removes the eastern like completely removes the eastern portion. So, you know, one leg, two leg, three leg, four leg, they're talking about possibly removing this leg and this whole area being a building site for a future tenant. So the tenant would have the southern access, and that's the existing access that's already there. This is where the car dealership is.
Mhm.
And then a northern access, which would line up with this road right here.
Okay, I understand now.
yeah, I feel compelled to bring this up with all the implications it has. Do we have any discussions ongoing about the rather obvious need for improvements to broadband? If it's going to absorb additional traffic, anybody that's driven broadband, it's pretty sad. And I recognize that doesn't, you know, that's not the responsibility of the
I think
developer.
Eaton County has a broadband repavement in their future plans, but at this point, I think they want to hold off until Delta Crossings is completely constructed.
Yeah, that's,
Completely constructed or just a.
yeah, all 4 phases or 5 phases.
I mean, that's just, you know, in passing, that's what I've heard. I couldn't
Yeah.
comment, you know, exactly what that meant.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would use the vast influence that you have to see if you can get them to pull that up a little more toward the.
With the road commission?
Yeah. That's why I said with all the implications that has.
Good luck, Dave.
I myself would like to see that roundabout stay in there, because it would be I think the flow of traffic would be a positive effect to have that around there.
I mean, it's possible, you know, you could argue that a study would be, you know, the only thing that could tell you whether it's necessary or not if you remove that leg.
That and also narrow it down to 3 lanes,
I mean, that would be, you know.
north of the roundabout.
But, you know, Matt Hannis said that he could see it working just fine as a traditional T. So it's a matter of, you know, what you guys think is necessary.
Another point, on the letter from Matt Hanna from January, item number 1, where we're talking about that 660 feet, and item, as far as no closer than that to broadband. Has that been, in their discussions recently, is that?
I think that was a different configuration than what ultimately you're seeing here. I'm not. Do you know how different the plan would have been in January That Matt, because Matt hasn't given us comments about the new one yet, because
Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Tom Demond with PA Group 7927, Suite 115, Brighton, Michigan.
Thank you.
So the previous design, when we started out with, initially had a full access drive into the clubhouse area, it was about, it split the difference about halfway between Broadbent and where you see currently seeing that drive that's there now. And with our discussions with Matt over the last several months, he did not want to see that full access that close to Broadbent, and he would accept a right in, right out only for that first access. That's what you see right there. So this was these drive approach locations we have worked on with the road commission. So
Is that at that point, how far is that right now approximately? As far as what is that 470 feet? Is that
I
correct?
used to know that. No, I'd have to look. I don't remember it off. It should be on the plan, so
I looked at one of the drawings.
it's
that-
stationing on the
that
plan, so it should.
Figure pretty close to what.
Start out at station 1, 2, 3, 350 feet. Where we're currently at.
Okay.
Yep,
So then
350 feet.
Matt is agreeable to that then?
yeah,
As long as it's a right in, right out.
Okay.
It's similar to what we did on phase 1 on Marketplace for that south drive between the BJ's and the credit union. Same thing.
All right.
There's a right in and right out at the clubhouse, but there's also a connection to the residential area. So they
Yes.
don't have to go
Yeah,
out.
exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Try to keep traffic internal instead of
Yep.
putting back on public roads. Agreed.
So Dave, if we have that bioswale, is that, how many lanes is that gonna bring?
so
us
the
to?
applicant actually provided me this today, so you guys haven't seen this yet. So this is a street cross section of what, a potential design of Carlson could be.
Okay,
So you have your 80-foot right away right here, 10-foot pathway on both sides, 11-foot internal lanes, which is a foot less than what was proposed in the first drawing that you've seen, and then I think 2-foot curbs on each side, and then the bioswale would be in the middle.
so is 2 lanes plus the swale then?
Yeah, so it's about, as wide as 3 lanes, because they're gonna have to bring a left-hand turn lane back in some instances, for an intersection or what have you. And it'll just take up the space in between that.
Sorry, how about at Broadbent itself? Is that gonna be 2 lanes or 2 lanes out?
I
Left
I would
turn.
say at Broadbent, the design will be very similar to what you see right here. Because I would imagine you need some stacking for left turn lanes. So if I had to guess, the swale is probably gonna start, right about here.
Agreed. And it would be right in, right out. It would allow us then to continue it through past that intersection there, because you don't have the drive into the, since we're right in, right out for the clubhouse, we can just carry that bioswale all the way through past that approach. So then you're not gonna have people trying to turn left into that. It becomes a barrier then. So that's great.
Yeah, it'll actually work as opposed to the one in phase 1 where people still turn left.
Yeah, and we should be able to carry that bioswale all the way down, David, to that next drive, because there's not almost, because we're gonna have left turns going in, so we'll have some stacking there too.
Okay,
it's
so
not gonna
somebody
extend all the
telling-
way to the Marketplace bioswale.
I mean, they'll fill it in when they can, where they can fit it.
In this case, that first full access drive there north of that basin you see right there where David's pushed, you're gonna have left turns into there, so we'll have, probably enough stacking for 5 to 6 cars coming from the west, turning left to go north. So we'll eliminate the bioswale there and just have the left turn, but then pick it up again, right where David's got his cursor, and be able to extend it between those two drives there, all the way.
So is that a pedestrian crossing there next to?
Mhm. And we're gonna try to push for pedestrian island, refuge island, but the Eaton County Road Commission doesn't like pedestrian islands. So that's a conversation that is ongoing.
So we'll be able to incorporate that into the bioswale then
Yeah.
right there, because there won't be any left turns from the people heading east, because there's nothing to turn into.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to control traffic, it occurs to me, there's almost an argument to be made in response to earlier comments that have been made to preserve the traffic circle. Would really potentially reduce or eliminate the need for the people to make a left turn off Carlson northbound into the residential, because they could go down to the traffic circle and use that as a turnabout to make the right turn into the residential. Would control traffic even more. Just conceptually, it occurred to me when I was looking at it. And
But once again, that's something we'll have to work out with the road commission, being this is gonna be public roads. Obviously, they have the final say on what we can do and can't do, so. But obviously, we will include the township in our discussions so that everybody's on the same page.
Any other things to mention regarding Carlson Road?
Nope, that's about it.
Okay.
Commissioners?
So, my question is in your proposed, staff recommendation. What implications does that have for the landscaping issue that you surfaced?
I guess it really depends on how the planning commission wants to interpret it. I mean, if you're comfortable with them, protecting the 40-foot area by the north property line, and then, inserting, some more tree protection where they can, and, still utilizing all of their available land. I mean, that's, your prerogative for how we're going to interpret it going forward.
Okay.
No, please go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that sounds like what I would be inclined to support.
Okay, that's
Because it preserves the stuff that's already there, which acts as a natural buffer, which is one of the issues that came up anyway.
Mhm.
And we would also take advantage of the opportunity, I heard Doug say, to deal with the circumference of the property with trees. I don't know if that was included in your comments or not.
I mean, I just generally try to see where we're not looking at this, where we could fill some stuff in, and, and keep some of the foliage into their, proposed design.
I'm generally comfortable with that.
Okay.
Yeah. But
No, you're good.
already-
I was thinking out loud. I do that. It's like an only child syndrome. Sorry. No, you're good.
Dave, when the colonials and the ranches, when they back up to each other, what kind of privacy is there between the?
As of right now, there weren't really any additional plantings here. I believe in the plan, there was just, kind of Greenland, there, it wasn't general, 100% privacy. Tom, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so what, as you're probably aware, it's judging on the piles that are out there currently and the amount of topsoil that we're going to be generating from this development. We've got to do something with it. We don't want to ship it off. So we've created these large green parks here, kind of down where David's got his cursor, and then the smaller one up above. What our goal is, wherever possible, we're going to start burning this topsoil. So we're gonna be creating some fairly nice buffers between these units when they back up each other. Obviously, there's some areas where just that one area, I think, for the most part, that kind of at the bottom point of the existing pond there's some units together. It'd be great if we can save some trees. If not, we can fill in them so with some, some nice, more likely native, focus on more native plantings for those areas. Being a landscape architect, that's near and dear to my heart, so.
About the large triangular piece there, you got anything right in the middle?
Yeah, so we'll burn that too. Wherever we're gonna have so much topsoil, we're gonna be putting berms all over the place, so it's gonna be nice.
Right.
Really nice. It's not gonna be a flat site, we're gonna really add a lot of character to it.
Yeah, and as a habitat, the berming along the edge will be good as well because it's less disruptive to
Exactly.
the wildlife because they're not directly exposed to the residences,
Yeah.
so.
And as David showed in the cross section we put together today, for Carlson, we had, once again, we've got 40 feet there we're working with, we're gonna berm it. So between kind of ice, separating the residential from the road, plus we're getting rid of topsoil, plus it's gonna, we believe, slow the traffic down. You've got these large berms now right on the side. We're gonna undulate them so they're not this, this wall that's gonna look natural and flowing, and so.
Dave, earlier you mentioned that 8-foot right of way. Is that
80 foot, yeah.
Pardon me?
80.
80 feet.
Yeah, this one shows 80 feet. So it shows 100 foot on the plan that you saw in your packet. But since then we've worked it out with everyone that everyone can accept 80 feet, and this would be the cross section of what you could expect the road to look like possibly.
So what's the distance between the 10-foot sidewalk and then the end of the street?
I figured that out today too.
80,
37,
section there.
39, 49, 59, 10 and a half feet
Okay,
each side.
all right.
And we can't plant in it.
Would love to, but we can't.
Yeah,
Right.
Commission will be happy with that.
I'd love to put trees in it, street trees, but
Yeah.
we're pushing it as we are, so I don't know.
So
that'll
commission
so
will be
it'll
happy.
basically be grass.
It'll be grass, yeah.
Okay.
They get real.
There may also be some
Cranky about
opportunity
it.
for some street furniture through the CIA district.
Yeah.
Streetscaping is a specific, point of a CIA. So, it could be park benches. I think water fountains were another one that was, brought up.
Are there, in the bioswale, are there specific provisions for the type of vegetation? I mean, is that something that's specifically designed to, for example,
Tolerate water.
filter wastewater or drain
Mhm.
water and that kind of thing? So,
Yeah, so there's gonna be a combination. It's made up of the soil types, because it's not your
Right.
typical soil types. We go deeper with the soils just
Right.
because of the roots that are involved in these, and plus you want to pull the water down into the soils, and then the plant materials. You gotta have plant materials that both can tolerate wet and dry.
so it's similar to what in urban areas are
Yeah.
referred to as rain gardens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
We had something like that proposed down on Waverly Road and that
Mhm.
development there,
Yeah.
which didn't go through. Mr. Chair. Mr. Murray.
Now, the areas that you're calling little park areas, whatever, are you gonna have any irrigation systems or in there? Or is that all gonna be natural? Natural, okay. So green in the spring, brown in the fall, in the late summer, just like my lawn.
Right.
I would assume you're gonna irrigate around the clubhouse.
Yeah, around the clubhouses. In a lot of areas, we will have irrigation, but we start getting into the green areas where we're gonna designate for parks and kids. We're just.
Oh, I agree, I agree.
So does that cover all the traffic and pedestrian safety study items?
Yeah, I mean, we actually ironed out a lot of our concerns in that Friday meeting, and
Okay.
we came to an agreement, and I think they understand what the township expects in regards to them providing a study for Carlson Road regarding pedestrian safety and the traffic impacts of design.
Hey, do we want to move on to tree preservation?
Sure.
Where do we stand? Where's we stand on that?
You're looking for an opinion?
Well, I'm looking for your thoughts.
Okay. My thought is I have an opinion. I would say from the higher density construction that they're going to be doing here, I wouldn't hold them to preserve some of the maybe undesirable trees and stuff. I would much rather see a specimen type trees planted post-construction. Now, the perimeter stuff is a little bit a different situation. Am I clear?
Yeah, you want new landscaping, take out all the old or the brush and what have you. And,
Yeah.
you know, nicer trees.
Trees that are dying because they can end up in the neighbor's yard when it's good storm comes, things that are half dead.
Well, and I
That kind of
would,
stuff.
yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I would agree with Mark on waiting to post-construction because it's really difficult to visualize the sight lines like from Shadow Glen and from these to the other areas till they're actually there. So, yeah, what's most harmonious and does the job, I would agree, you know. I think, you know, just say it's agreed that that will be done and it'll be, you know, a plan will be put in place at the proper time.
So for what areas is that you're talking about, Mark?
I wouldn't hold them to preserve trees in the densely residential construction areas. Okay, I don't
Oh,
want, I don't expect them to go
okay.
around
I got you.
trees and
You're not talking about
not the perimeter.
okay,
Yeah,
got you. That makes sense.
Can I speak on?
Go ahead. Name and
Hi.
address for the record, please.
Chris Christofsky, developer of Delta Crossings, 3300 Telegraph Road, Bingham Farms, Michigan, 48025. I just want to clarify that, you know, that buffer, you know, we're pretty much leaving about half of it because right now it's about 100 feet of a buffer. If you're asking us to keep that entire buffer, well, we're gonna lose a lot of units drawing that in. So we're gonna lose a lot. We've already been limited because originally, if you recall, our original plan was to make this just your typical townhome and ranch style community. Well, you know, what we need to do is do a very natural appealing neighborhood here. And I just don't want to be the developer to bring in a multifamily where you're just condensing everything all in one big area and it's just you're commercializing it. So bringing this type of natural community will bring more of a residential community feel. And that's why we were left that, well, our performers weren't laying out with the amount of units, which we had an additional 160 units to make our performer work. So that's why we made the decision that we had no other choice but to do a hybrid component, which would bring the 3-story walk-up units, which are going to be very beautiful as well. And I don't know if you've seen the 3D renderings, but we're making this very as aesthetically appealing and more of an open kind of community feel with the clubhouse and with the common green area, because we want to bring a product where the community is going to want to come and live in. People are going to want to, the citizens are going to want to live in. And we just don't want to commercialize this. We want to make them feel that even though they're in a multifamily development, we want to make them feel that they're still part of a community that is, you know, not only beneficial to the parents, but to the kids. And that's why we've created all this open green space area and at the same time been able to, you know, maximize the footprint to put enough units in this development to make our bottom line numbers work. So, you know, drawing that in is going to, if you notice how we are compared, and just imagine us having to pull that in another 50 feet and how the angles are and how Marketplace is laid out, we're gonna lose a lot of units here. And now it's gonna force me to now add more buildings, 3-story walk-ups that I don't wanna do. I think we've limited that and we've kept them over towards the commercial side, which would obviously help shadow the, you know, residential, the townhomes and the ranches from the commercial. 40 foot is a very good buffer. And again, those trees, there's nothing special about those trees. I think they've grown their life. And I think that buffer is plenty enough of a screen wall for shadow glens. So I'm just throwing that out there. It's your decision to make. It's ultimately your choice, but it's going to really affect us, and it's going to impact this development.
I don't think that's what we're gonna force you to do.
Okay.
Okay, we're just working with your plans here,
Sure.
and the perimeter will be what it is.
Yeah.
We're not gonna force you in.
Yeah.
No. As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the notion of if we maintain whatever is there 40 feet out from, for example, the retention pond.
Sure.
I'm comfortable with that as a natural buffer to what you're doing. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm sorry that you kind of misread.
No, yeah, that's why I just wanted to make sure I want to be on the record to be
Yeah,
clear.
we just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
No,
Also, I want to actually add that when we originally laid this out with Carlson Road, you know, the easement that we have, part of the church parcel that we're actually acquiring now for the clubhouse. Our initial drawing was a straight shot, and it was Eaton County that said, well, hold on, we got to put some bends in this road, and that's why, to limit the speed of traffic.
Right.
I told, when we had our meeting on Friday with David, I said, look, when he said 45, like my eyeballs opened up. I'm like, there's
Dave wants 55.
No.
I heard him say 55.
Dave is doing, I mean, look, obviously Dave's priority is pedestrian safety as well as is mine. And you know, that, you know, his concern, I take, you know, to heart, because pedestrians are a concern to me as well. But the way we're laying things out and the way we're doing this now, and hopefully that Eaton County works with us, which I truly believe, because, you know, once we get this approved, hopefully today, time. Our plan, ultimate goal is to sit down with Eaton County and say, guys, let's figure this out. And if you need somebody to put some speed signs up, I'll pay for the speed signs. I'll even pay for the speed signs on Marketplace, because one, I don't want Marketplace in my development at 55 like it is to the south. That's just absurd. It's just not necessary, especially with the development that's going on there. There's just no reason that 55 should even be thought of. Second is that roundabout, yes, would help with a flow. But again, a T with stop signs would obviously slow the traffic down too. So that's something that it's either the roundabout or not, which I've told David that, you know, Eaton County advised to him that, well, if you're going to remove the east leg, then a roundabout's not necessary. Well, I've seen 3-leg roundabouts. There's plenty of them, you know, and they do them, and one, because of the, you know, congestion of traffic that could build up, you know, depending on how much traffic's going to go through there. So ultimately it's going to need to be a conversation with all of us to sit down with Eaton County and figure out how we're going to do it. I think the roundabout, I like it. I'd rather do the roundabout. Trust me, I would, because one, I have a plan set up for the roundabout where my partner that was killed, I don't know if you're familiar, he was one of my partners that, you know, kind of worked with me on this development. He was actually killed last year in Florida. And, you know, we wanted to set up a monument there for him in the roundabout. So, but, you know, so yes, I'm going to try to push to keep the roundabout, but ultimately, like everybody says, it's really Eaton County's, you know, decision.
Well, I think with that roundabout in there, that it keeps the traffic moving as opposed to.
I agree.
I'm a miser when it comes to fuel consumption.
Yeah.
Anything to keep it moving
Right.
is a plus to me.
Yeah. And they're aesthetically more pleasing than a T with stop signs. They are. I mean, it looks nice. So, but I wanted to keep the east leg. I really did. But there's, I can't disclose it, but there's a really promising development that we're putting together for phase 3B right now, which is the east section of, just east on the other side of the marketplace. And I wanted to be able to keep Blaine's from, I had to relocate Blaine's. And the objective, which it came in perfect unison, was to put them in a less favorable area where we were going to have some challenges putting some, additional tenants in because everybody wants to be in the strip center. So we were planning originally to have the overflow go into the east, but it just wasn't working out. So the opportunity came where Blaine's is agreeing to relocate, and it's a perfect, and it actually lays out very perfectly. It's just, we just eliminate the east leg of the roundabout, which is a private road.
So right now, as far as with that pond there, the triangular piece,
Sure.
the trees, do they butt right up to the pond itself? Or is there?
I mean, I don't know if it's even, I gotta look over it, but I don't think it's a full flow of trees that
It's not-
even go
not
around
all
the
the way
pond.
around it,
And
no,
no,
like in a
it's
big,
just
that, like,
sporadic. Yeah.
Chunk,
Okay.
just for the triangle.
So
there.
like Tom advised, around that V area, we're gonna kind of, we'll probably burn it, right? Or is it? Yeah.
No, what would just be?
And we'll just put some some plants and some vegetation that is obviously adaptable to, the nature that's around that, that would work.
All right, you mentioned
there
just
you can
recently,
see.
just
Right.
a minute ago, that you had purchased the property to the church property? Is it-
Yes.
They
the whole
already
Yes.
came here before.
Not the existing church, there's another church. that
Right.
owns-
They have vacant land, sorry.
Yeah.
It's vacant land that the church owns.
Okay,
It's
all
not
right.
the church. No, the church ain't going anywhere.
Well,
No.
that's-
So we're buying the 6 acres from the church to our property.
Okay.
Right, that was
Yes.
already brought here, right, before?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
brought it
Yeah,
up for
so-
rezoning, yes.
For
Yeah,
rezoning.
yep.
Yep.
Which eventually is where the clubhouse
Yes.
sits. That's where the clubhouse is
All
going.
right.
I have a question, if I can, Mr. Chair, if I can so
That's
ask.
all.
This is more for staff, if that's okay.
Okay. So I can
So-
sit down?
Yes.
All right.
So Mike, can we, I know we're like beating a dead horse at this point, but talking again about the preservation of environmental quality, like this is gonna set a precedent. So I want to understand better what the concerns are about the decisions we're gonna be making about the trees, and I'm not trying to like alter and say you can't have all of this because I want you to save a patch of trees, like I respect that as well. But I want to understand moving forward, because this is gonna set a precedent, like what are foreseeable consequences of us making this decision or this decision, X, Y, and Z that you could see in the
I mean,
future?
if there comes to be a group of forest or woodland that you deem more preservable,
Sure,
it may be harder to preserve that because, they're gonna look at the specific instances in each case, but, really, if we have a standard that says protect woodlands and wetlands and habitats, and, we're not doing that completely, then, that's just how we should continue on from this point on.
no, that's fair, that's why I wanted to ask that, so then,
So if a development comes along that it's like, there's 100-year-old, a grove of like 100-year-old white pines, in the middle of the section of the development,
sure,
we're not really set up for that regardless of what zoning district is. And, there's little that we could probably do to preserve those
so
without getting
then,
sued.
what kind of language, because I'm gonna guess that doesn't exist there, correct?
What's
And
that?
The kind of nature that we're talking, so I respect where you're going with this, and this is my concern about setting a precedent, even though it should be probably more cut and dry with this. Is that's what happens in the future, so then what's the kind of language we can try and interpret now that allows them to continue to move forward?
I mean, you
That's where my concern's coming from, right? So like just saying yes or no to something today, like that's what my concern is in the future, is that we set that precedent and people can wipe down heritage trees, which I know, I'm gonna guess is not the majority of what's going on here. Cause again, I've seen the field, I live here, I've been through it. Like I know they're just, a majority of them are not worth saving to begin with, right? But that's not what this story is about. Like it's for the future. So that's where I'm just curious as to like, how can we work together to make sure that this is being captured appropriately?
We could write it into our ordinance that, so right now, we only preserve large trees in setbacks and not
Right.
necessarily in, if it was the middle of a plan. So that's something, and that was a very deliberate move. Because, typically Delta Township's been very favorable to developers and, we didn't want to put any, lessen the potential, the developmental potential of a piece of property because of, a tract of trees. But that's just one, strategy for development. There are communities that, hold all woodlands regardless of, their quality
Correct.
in high regard. It's kind of, there's really not a perfect,
I know there's not, but I had to ask it, so.
yeah.
Well, Mark had just mentioned that we take out the scruff and have the developer put in specimen trees. Would that cover the?
It's,
Well, I mean, we call it scruff, but it still is habitat for a variety of
right,
flora and fauna. So I mean, you're still just disturbing that, even if, you're planting what in 50 years might be, a nicer grove of trees. And I think, specifically the ordinances that I pointed out were protect natural areas. Not necessarily, and because of their natural, and because of every different kind of, animal or insect or, what have you, bird or that live in all varieties of woodland.
Right.
Just because it doesn't look like a pretty tree to us, it might be great for a chipmunk.
no, correct, but I do think that, like, and I could just be speaking out of turn here, but if these were concerns, then these, like, we passed this for them to develop it. So, I mean, we're here now and they want to develop it.
Mhm.
So like, that's where I feel like that conversation should have been maybe a stronger talking point at that point.
Mhm.
If I can just,
No, and that's fine. And I mean, part of the reason why I kind of
this is a good
bring
conversation,
things
I'm
up
glad you're
is
bringing it up.
to, maybe we can't catch it, or handle the situation now exactly how we wanted to,
Right,
but maybe that's enough for us to say, okay, well, next time this comes around, we're gonna plan now
and totally,
and
Yeah.
make necessary changes.
no, and I respect that. So like, I'm glad you're bringing it to our attention. I think it's worth having a conversation.
Right.
Again, I don't want to stop your development from going,
Right.
but if it's a
mean,
precedent being set, how we do things
I have
moving
ulterior
forward, I get
motives for a
concerned
lot of
about
the
that.
things that I bring up to your attention.
I'm sorry?
I have ulterior motives for a lot of things
Yeah.
that I
Yeah,
bring
that's
to
cool.
your
I know,
attention.
I get it.
No, I mean, one possibility would be to simply, elevate the visibility of the language in the ordinance regarding preservation of habitat and wetlands and that kind of stuff to, perhaps an independent entity and add that specifically to the review protocol. So that when that issue comes up in the future, potential developers are aware that that is something that will need to be presented and cared for. I mean, I don't think there's a way to develop an ironclad standard that says we keep this kind of tree and don't keep that kind of tree or whatever. But
Yeah,
I think
mean,
it's worth considering elevating it and giving it its own mention.
Yeah, I mean, that's, one way to look at it. You could, take a cumulative, area and say that, you can, disturb 40 to 60%, just pick a number.
Mhm.
And then, there, I guess it's up for the community to determine what's most important to them and then plan accordingly for everything else.
Right.
So I'm not saying either way is right or wrong. It's ultimately what your end desire is.
Well, it depends which side of the woodland woodlot you're on as to what's more important.
Mhm.
Thank you for entertaining my question. I appreciate it. And for your patience while you're done.
And David, I want to go back to my question that I had asked you earlier. You said it's in the 120 page report, but my question was, and the whole 120 pages, no, I did not read, but what is in there? Do we know?
Yeah, they have a list of all
They have a
the,
list of
all the large trees.
Okay, on the perimeter of
Mhm.
what's included, because most of it is all gone from the development, I mean, of the whole area.
Well, it's not gone yet, but yeah.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
will be gone in that sense, okay. Okay, it's hard when you say that whatever we do here is setting a precedence, it's hard to know what are we setting up? I mean, because to me, it's a case by case. There's not gonna be any two developments that are the same.
Totally. Yes, and no.
Really? Okay. Well,
I mean, we just try to treat everyone equally and every situation equally. So because of that, and I think we may try more than most communities, I say a lot of things are precedent setting that a lot of people don't necessarily would even think twice about, because that's just the way I've been trained, that, what comes before that person dictates what comes after. And it's also by making sure that we're treating everyone equally. It also protects the township against lawsuits and things like that, which is, ultimately one of the things in the back of my head on anything that I do.
okay. No, I hear that, but I understand where she's coming from when she says that it seems like it's something we would have looked at prior to this point,
Mhm.
because now they have their plan,
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an argument you could make, and it really depends on, how well you formulate it and who agrees with you. It's something for us to say that, these trees aren't that great, but different trees are, but none of us are arborists or, environmentalists.
Well, that's true too. I mean, and that's something that if we wanted to do, we could be like, okay, well then go get it assessed and tell me what all your trees are and.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's,
where
Meridian
this is
Township
going.
does something very similar. It's another barrier to development, and
It
whether
is.
we want to do that or not, that's a decision for the township board
Right.
ultimately.
Right, but but then in my mind, this is where this conversation can go very quickly,
Mhm.
is to having these things go back to the board to make these
Yeah,
changes, so.
Yeah, DNR would be more than happy to come in and evaluate it as a habitat and tell you, what species you've got and what you need to preserve to keep them, and they'll be more than happy to do that. We have another Kirtland warbler, right?
So where do we stand now with tree preservation in this case?
sounds like you guys were comfortable with, based on what I've heard, that you're comfortable with basically what they presented, preserving the 40 feet from the property line, preserving, the area around kind of where they show this tree line. And, up to here, and then just inserting new trees that'll one day grow and, be nice. But that's kind of what I interpreted based on all the testimony I've heard today.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I think I agree. So what does that do to impact the existing trees and natural area? What does that plan do to that?
So if you look at this, so, this is the tree line all around here that kind of follows this road. So, this whole area approximately is being, taken out, and this area is taken out. And then there's, this is also densely forested, but will be future commercial. And, like I said, what we're talking about right now here is how I'm going to interpret, whatever comes next.
Okay, so it's fairly significant impact to the existing.
Yeah, the difference is, when it's done, you likely won't know that there was such a large wooded area there.
Right.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It'll be the result of,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So then how do we get more specific into what Mr. Moody was saying then with, like, what kind of language do we craft to ensure that that happens?
I mean, I would use a distance, so, you know, within 40 feet of property lines and or water features.
With the replacement of the specific trees too, correct? I mean,
Oh,
is that-
well, we don't actually have a mechanism for replacement in the, built in the zoning ordinance, so.
Right, that's what I
You
thought.
know, we're fortunate enough that K2 understands that a well-landscaped residential
Yes.
development is a benefit. And, you know, they are graciously providing us with street trees and berm.
No, like the designs were like, they were very.
Yeah.
They're very nice. They really are.
So, you know, we don't necessarily have to work, you know, it should be look like a very nice development, but that might not be the case next time.
Yeah,
And I guess that's another strategy that we could employ, that, you know, if you remove trees, you have to add trees.
Well, I was gonna say, because there's tree to tree. I mean, there's communities that do that. For every tree you remove, you have to replace it with one. Which
So I
is
mean, that's something,
something,
you know, we look into, I think Gary's gonna spend the next year working on ordinance amendments, so that perhaps that's, you know, something that we can look to build into the ordinance. Is a tree replacement program for situations like this.
well, that, and yeah, and if there's some, you know, beauties out there that are worth saving, language that could be incorporated would be nice, that too. It will make today easier, I guess.
Mhm.
I'm not saying our jobs are meant to be easy.
No,
But-
but I mean, I don't like gray areas in.
Yeah, it's too gray for me to be comfy.
Yeah.
Be like, yeah, this is great. But I guess that's my problem. It's too gray.
That's why I neglected to make the decision.
It's fine. That's why
Yeah.
we're here.
yeah,
I can respect that.
yeah.
When's our next chance to rewrite the ordinances?
Like I said, Gary's kind of, I think that's, you know, one of the things he wants to do before he retires, but I don't think he got a taste of retirement. I don't think he's ready to retire anytime soon. So I don't want to say it like that.
That's fair.
He's going to be around for a while from what I can understand. He is getting healthier. Yeah, I mean, he's the way he told me that he's going to run the department is basically, you know, Matt and I will be doing the day-to-day stuff, and then he'll be doing the large projects.
Yeah.
I guess I'm comfortable with supporting this. I'm not necessarily comfortable with the notion that exactly what we supported today is precedent setting. Because I agree with Wendy that there's got to be some case by case until such time as we can develop the detail.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of the times, you know, a lot of the reason why we don't have that is because the ordinance is so ambiguous. You know, if we were to build in stronger language about tree preservation, then we could have something to hang our hat on.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, well, part of the way that I used to evaluate things too is you create the presumption. And what we can do is create a presumption, and then the onus is on the person who wants to take things out to explain, you know, why that isn't harmful or why it's compulsory in order for them to be able to develop. I mean, like in their case, you know, we're not going to sit here and say, well, you got to cut the number of units you're going to put in by half.
Right, no,
I mean, that's
absolutely
directly
not.
contrary to what we've, okay, but you go in and say, obviously, these, but you shift the presumption. You shift the presumption away from clear cutting to preservation, and then take away as little as you can rather than bulldozing it and, you know, putting in 6-foot trees that none of us will live to see mature. So,
And they grow pretty fast.
yeah.
I'm not that old.
You know, I think we have a toolbox and we're reaching into the toolbox and we don't have the tools that
Not
we
yet.
think,
Yep.
right. So we're gonna have to deal with what we've got. and move on.
I agree.
No, agreed.
I think it's as good as we can make it right now.
And then when we walk out the room, we're gonna have to depend on Gary and David to do the amendments to the ordinance and install what we've all been talking about.
All right, let's move on to private road.
So, and that one was the determination whether this constitutes a private road. The applicant labeled it a private road on the site plan. It technically meets the definition of a private road as I read earlier. But I mean, it also does function as a parking lot. So, you know, how exactly is it that you would like us to interpret that? And do you have concerns that, you know, there'll be traffic backing up into this driveway?
Personally, it looks a lot more what I think of as a parking lot than a road, given it only runs in front of the three buildings. It's not like it's a through road that people are gonna be accelerating and going, if they're coming back in there, they're coming to one of those units probably, which sounds more like a parking lot to me.
Well, David, that looks almost identical to Canal Club. How do we handle that?
Well, Canal Club was designed a long time ago.
It's an aisleway in a parking lot.
Right.
And that's fine. And we, you know, if that's how you want to interpret it, then that issue becomes smooth.
Yeah. You put speed restrictions on those?
Not really, but I mean, you know, these are kind of tight curves, so you really will only be able to get so fast. That was kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to just squeeze them into 20 feet lane widths, because that's going to help slow things down.
Right.
But the fire department's worried about being able to, you know, get to various safety issues, which I guess I understand.
Fair.
I think those are all the talking points.
Yeah, I had one other point, and I think it's a simple one, is on the perimeters, where there's exposure to, you know, already existing, and that's very limited. I mean, the only one is really Shadow Glen, and that's quite a ways away. But they raised concerns in there, you know, about light and that kind of stuff. So I guess I would just, as a general statement, say,
Yeah, they submitted a
let's
photometric
keep,
plan.
keep light as low profile as we can and focused. And that's kind of in the interest of the habitat as well.
Well, they've got, was it 20-foot poles in the,
Yeah,
Housing
the
area?
design
Yes.
is
They're lower
complementary to
than-
that too.
It will.
Yeah, so
well, then
that's,
they're
Yeah,
gonna be, they're
I think
gonna
they're good
be
listening to that.
protected from Shadow Glen.
right. Yep.
I do have a question regarding, well, this is for the developer. What is your rental rate? Have you determined that as far as between the types of units?
No, not yet, but we're close.
Are you expecting to include utilities in the price or not?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be your typical. I'm not a property. But yes, I mean, I'm assuming this will have like your typical, you know, gas and, you know, water is included, but, you know, electric is not. Cable will be included with your basic channels. Then obviously the resident has the options of upgrading, so forth.
The reason I ask is that's something that I brought up at when we did the Olive Garden last winter. Was recharging stations.
Yeah, we're gonna have some of those
Okay.
for vehicles, right?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, we're working on a couple different areas that we're actually in conversation right now with a private group that's gonna come in and Right.
In the special land use process for that, so
I
just.
know you do. Once we determine where they're at, David, I promise you, we're gonna be submitted for.
All right, that was my concern because with the way that the automobile industry is going, it's very, looks like it's gonna be 100% electrical or pretty close to it.
Yeah, you're gonna be home of the battery plant for the whole entire nation, so.
Right.
Well, who was it? Oregon or Washington? One of them announced that they're gonna ban all internal combustion by like 2035.
Yeah,
That's
which is nuts. I'm like,
unfortunately, look, I support it, but until the rest of the world jumps on board for the same thing. The world spins, so we all share the same area.
Well, then I read over the weekend where down in Antarctica, there's a piece of the ice cap.
Oh, the whole ice
size-
sheet that
size of
collapsed,
New
yeah.
York City is
Yep.
just disconnected. All right, so anybody else have any other things to bring up?
I'm good.
Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Or is this supposed to be a public hearing on this?
No, it's not a public hearing.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Kaczynski,
I move the Delta Township Planning Commission approve the preliminary site plans for the proposed Delta Crossings Phase 3 plan as illustrated on site plans prepared by PEA Group on February 22nd, 2022, subject to the following stipulations, of which there are 7.
Support.
Mr. Dave.
And just a reminder that the applicant is to also provide a phasing plan for the apartment development.
As a what, please?
Phasing plan.
Okay.
I stated first thing that I had neglected to put that in the list of stipulations.
So
was
is there
there 8 then,
8?
including a phasing plan?
Mhm.
Support. All right, is this a voice or a roll call?
Just voice.
Oh,
And moved by Mr. Kaczynski, supported by Mr. Mudry, that we accept the site plan. Favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
So we have three nays.
3 or 2?
I was a nay.
Oh,
So it's a 4-3. 4-3 vote. The nays were Bradley, Schweitzer, and McConnell.
I think
it's gotta be it's gotta be 5 or more.
yeah, so it didn't pass. Right?
Yep.
So do we have to hold it over for consideration when the other 2 are here, or?
Yeah, what's our,
That you could try to do another motion. I don't know, if, I guess I don't know what the reasoning was for, voting against it. Or you could, table it for another week.
why don't we do that? Let's table it then. If it's, are we never gonna get any further than 4-3 today?
Well, my concern was, I feel like there needs to be some language about this, more language, specific language in terms of you're saying we're setting a precedence. I don't see everything that we've discussed or whatever in those 7 or 8 elements there. I just
So
feel like
there's-
there needs to be some type of a statement that where we're recognizing that, this is one of the first times that we're doing this like this, but ordinarily moving forward, even, we will be looking at this at a earlier part in the process.
Mhm.
I guess it,
Well, I guess part of what I took out of tonight's discussion is that, we can look at this going forward when we come up with more zoning ordinance amendments. and seeing if there's, you know, a little bit more stringent and clear way to handle tree preservation and or replacement. Because you were concerned about the precedent setting over tree preservation or.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I mean, a lot of the reason why I said that is because it's such a generalized, the two standards are very, you know, it's just, we should protect living trees and wetlands. And, you know, it's great to say that, but it's a lot better to put context into it and with, you know, specific dimensional standards or distances from wetlands and, you know, something a little bit more tangible. And because it's not tangible, which is why I said that it's precedent setting. And I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing per se. It's just, you know, when, for instance, when Delta Crossings commercial next phase comes in and on the other side of Marketplace, and it's going to encroach on the other half of this woodland lot, I'll know that, you know, it's pretty, pretty standard practice that at the very least, if the trees aren't already protected, you know, 8 inches or larger, that the planning commission tends to be comfortable with, you know, removing kind of the smaller trees and putting in some nicer specimen trees that would meet, in this case, probably a type B buffer, because that would be a commercial next to an RM.
But as of right now, we don't have the tools to do that.
Mhm.
We can't specify because we don't have a specific ordinance that says that. So 2 weeks from now, we're going to come and we're going to still have the same tools. Or we won't have the same tools.
Yeah, and I guess, you know,
We may have more people.
yeah, you could also have more people and, you know, whether they agree or disagree is, you know, we don't really know where that would fall. And I mean, I don't think it's you can do anything wrong by, you know, voting against it. But I guess, you know, to answer your concerns, that's what I heard, is that, you know, we're doing what we can in this instance, but perhaps we're going to look at it so we don't have to ask ourselves this conversation again by adding, you know, language for either more exacting preservation or at the very least replacement.
So does this come back to us again
No.
at some point? Or
Not if you approve it.
at this?
No, it would be the same, if we table it, it would be the same presentation and the same information we would vote on in 2 weeks from now, assuming we had a quorum. Is that
I mean,
fair?
I guess if they phased it, then each additional phase could come. You know, you could approve, you could say that, you know, they're gonna phase it. Do you know how many you're going to phase it with? Is it 2 or 3?
We don't know yet. I mean, we've kind of held off on going any further until we get a approval, because we're kind of, our back is kind of against the wall with MDOT having to put Marketplace in Carlson in. We have until the end of the year to do that. And we still don't even have our financing in place because we can't get our financing approval. I thought we were I mean, I think we followed your ordinance to a T here with regards to the buffer and you know, preserving as much as we can, and obviously also developing the site to a economics, you know, that would work economically for us. I don't think there's anything else we can do. But more likely, it's going to be 3 phases, 2 to 3 phases, which will have a blend of both. Couple buildings, for sure. The clubhouse will go into phase 1 with maybe 1 or 2. It's pretty much you build as you know, lease out. So what we want to do is have a combination of both, because it's not working. We want to make sure we bring, you know, all the preferences, you know, to lease from the townhomes, ranches, and the 3-story walk-ups.
Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, members of the commission. I'm Mark Abenatha with Alexander Bogarts, the architects for the project, 2445 Franklin Road, Bloomfield Hills. I had a long presentation, but you guys covered just about every item in it. I think you need to go back to what David said, and he said that we're fortunate that we've got a developer that understands if we're going to take trees out, that we want to do a quality project and bring quality trees into the project and look at that as the precedent, as opposed to that we're coming in and trying to clear cut. That's not the intent at all. The intent is to bring in a beautiful development, create large open spaces, and protect that entire northern half all the way around the wetland area and down along the west side, creating wildlife corridors, those types of things. So with the ordinance that you have in place and what I think a great development team that we've got and a great project, we are just absolutely thrilled about this project with what it's going to do to bringing residents and rooftops in to support the retail and commercial that is going into that development, to support housing for the new battery plant and new projects that are coming in. So I think, to me, you've got a great project here that you could move forward as designed and not necessarily be setting a precedent other than you've got a quality development. And until you get your ordinance changed, you can look at other future developments or other phases to this with the same features. You've got to have quality architecture. You've got to have quality landscape materials that are in, those types of things. So I thought what he said earlier was excellent. And I think it fits this project to a T. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm willing to change my vote to support. Support it.
Anybody have your motion?
Don't you make a motion?
What's that?
So Wendy said she would be up to change her vote, so
Oh, so she, yeah. So she's requesting a reconsideration of the motion. That's the technical.
Yes, is that what I'm doing? Yes. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, if we can,
She can do that because she voted against.
okay, so that we can,
So
Okay.
she's requesting a reconsideration of the motion. So now the motion needs to be restated.
repeat it, you say?
Yes.
Mr.
So she needs to make the motion for reconsideration,
Okay,
and that needs to be seconded
I'd like to make a motion for a reconsideration of my vote,
okay,
of the motion.
of the motion
of the motion as presented.
as presented.
And so I'll second that so that we can. Now we need to vote on the reconsideration of the motion.
Motion's been created by Ms. Bradley and supported by Mr. McConnell. That we reconsider the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye, or nay?
No, I'm fine. 40. So now the motion needs to be made again.
by Doug.
It does.
Okay.
I move the Delta Township Planning Commission approve the preliminary site plans for the proposed Delta Crossings Phase 3 plan as illustrated on the site plans prepared by PEA Group on February 22nd, 2022, subject to the following stipulations, of which there are 7.
8.
Eight.
Sorry.
That's
8.
right, you added one. Yep.
Is there support?
Support.
So moved by Mr. Kozinski and supported by Mr. Boudry that we re-vote on the original motion.
Still have discussion.
Pardon?
No, I was just saying, you still have discussion.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
That's one of the reasons I said that, because I wanted to say something. I just want to say that my no vote is not against the developers. It's against the notion that what we would be supporting would be precedent setting and would define us in the future until such time as new rules were written. I would simply like to say that with the notion that the developer is respecting to the extent feasible the existing trees, although not necessarily the wildlife, because once that's destroyed, they will be destroyed, but that the developer is considering the notion of planting trees and foresting the area to create a nice environment as a supplemental effort. I think those kind of components begin to develop a standard for this kind of thing that I could certainly support in the future. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No,
No.
5-2, motion passes.
Right.
motion carries, right?
Motion carried.
That's why we have a good parliamentarian among us.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
You earned every penny of your salary tonight.
Okay, the assistant planning director comments?
We had, we'll have GM coming up this month. So they should be submitting maybe end of the week. They need to do a traffic study, which I don't think they planned on initially
On the battery plant?
on the battery plant, because it's,
I thought the city of Lansing would be handling that.
no, we do all the, it's a 425,
Yeah,
the city of
to
Lansing, but
us.
Delta does all the,
Okay.
Yeah, it's all ours, everybody.
yeah.
All right.
So like they have all our tree preservation ordinances. I've already talked to someone about it. So, I've had a meeting with GM. They called early today, spoke with Gary. They know what they need to do, and it's a matter of whether they can do it to meet their deadlines. Got a couple other, rods in the fire, but nothing too crazy.
Okay. Planning commission comments.
No comments, but when is Olive Garden open?
You should have asked them.
Yeah, you missed your chance.
Salads are calling my name.
Is the Roadhouse open?
Wednesday, right?
Yep.
Wednesday?
Now that the developers are gone, I just wanted to say to my fellow commissioners that the residential build of this K2 thing is probably the most important for us in the township. We basically have nowhere for people to live. Okay, this is very important, and I'm very happy that they're proceeding with this.
A couple of those rods in the fire are large scale residential developments. More apartments,
Yep,
More apartments?
more apartments.
yep.
So the southwest corner of Broadbent, I think is 70 acres. They're talking about
Oh,
apartments there, kind of very similar to how this back part would.
do we have any
develop.
rezoning to approve first?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's on
Something to
farm field
consider.
right now.
Okay.
And then it's at the old high school off Saginaw Highway. Is it O'Rafferty?
Yep, right on Saginaw there.
Yeah, so
The
We had
call
meetings.
center.
yeah,
Oh,
well,
yeah, the call center.
Yeah.
well,
Okay, that's all.
that's gonna get demolished potentially, and then residential development.
Really?
Really? Wow.
That'll be
All the
nice.
way to the back of St. George?
Yeah.
To the ball fields?
200
Wow.
something units, I think.
Wait, correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably am wrong. We don't have anything that makes us, that encourages like percent for like affordable AMI, right?
We don't, but specifically that development will be referred to as what's workforce housing.
So attainable housing for our workforce?
I mean,
Okay, I know they're all out there right now. and
yeah,
inflation's
it's,
getting
I
crazy.
mean, with inflation and everything, it's just under market rate.
Okay,
I mean, I think they were proposing between $1,100 to $1,400 a month. And I mean, that's what they're saying is, housing for the average Joe, and it's like, that sounds like a lot even for, anybody. But that's just the reality of the rental market. And
No, it is.
hopefully that, if we have 1,000 new apartments that come online in the next 5 years, that maybe that'll help bring some other rents down and, have it be more affordable for our residents. But it's interesting that very few, ownership opportunities are coming. It's all rental.
well, let's have an immediate need. People can't buy a house.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
I
McConnell,
wonder if I could make a motion for the record.
you can make a motion.
Okay. I'd like to move that we communicate to our planning director our appreciation about his return, that we have missed him, have appreciated the very capable service of staff during his absence, but look forward to his returning to work full time.
Support.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Bob.
I'm sure we'll get a kick out of that.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll do
Support.
Don't everybody speak at once.
So who's making the motion, Mike?
I will defer to.
He made the motion.
All right, Mr. Kaczynski is supported by Ms. Bradley.
Yeah, exactly.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. And I promise I won't change my mind.
All opposed, motion carried.
No, it's-
We stand adjourned. 7:57,
Oh my God. I thought this was-
adjournment.
I told my wife this was gonna be a short.
Actually, I walked into this meeting, he had potential to go longer than that.
Yeah, I told my